Hey, what's going on? So this is a convict's perspective with your homie Rojo.
It's your boy Flacco. On today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the Surenos. And I'm going to be breaking this down into different parts. One part is how I originally, my dealings as a kid, all the way up to as an adult, and how at first, young in my career as a kid, how I despised them and had hostile actions towards them, to where later on in my career, I ended up having a little bit more respect towards Surenos as a whole. So here I go. So originally, like I said before, man, I started gangbanging around 1990. And it was a whole different environment out there in the Soho area. I'm from Vato Milpas Locals. Got jumped in my hood around 91. And at that time, we weren't encountering that much interactions with Sureños. It was they had a whole different stilo. And what a lot of Sureños don't realize, right, that during this time era, in the early 90s, right, you don't have the type of stilo that the Norteños have now, like the long hair and bumping all this rap music. It was a whole different environment. We basically used to dress the same way as Sureños at that time, but we were Norteños. You know what I'm saying? We had bald heads. We were all cholo down. We used to wear hairnets, and the whole stilo was the same, just like as far as the movies like Mi Vida Loca, American Me, Blood In, Blood Out, all these movies, we had that same style. The only difference that you seen in us is that we wore more red. So it was a whole different type of stilo as opposed to what you see now. So back then, like I said, you wouldn't really encounter too many Sureños. And like I said in the previous interview, the upstate Sureños had a whole different stilo. A lot of them were more paisas. And see, if you encounter someone, unless they were wearing that looked more like they were from LA or more Chicano looking, you wouldn't be able to tell if they were Sureño unless they were wearing like a blue Dallas Cowboys jersey or something to that extent, or a blue belt.
Dodgers.
Yeah. So the Sureños had a whole different stilo, and they used to kick it in their pockets. And so my encounters with them as a youth, it wasn't as much as it came nowadays. You know what I'm saying? They used to wear like a lot of, everybody remembers this. You'd run into them basically in their neighborhoods like Pokeway, SSP, which was on the west side, all these different hoods out there on McLaughlin, Tammy Lee. You'd run into Sureños in those areas, but they used to stay in their pockets. And at that time, a lot of them were more Baisa orientated. You know what I'm saying? They used to wear these shirts that were called Azteca shirts, right? That you get at the flea market. And it'd have a Virgin Mary on the back, or it'd have a Jesus Christ, You wouldn't see no Norteños wearing those type of shirts. They were...
I'm not going to lie. I had like 20 of those myself.
Oh, yeah. So they had a whole different Mexican culture type of view. You know what I'm saying? Not to say the Norteños didn't, right? But there were certain things to a certain extent that they didn't wear at that time. And so, and like I said, as a young kid, it was more red on red. You know what I mean? We were banging on other hoods. You came into my hood, you were from another hood. It was funk. We were fucking with a lot of blacks at the time in the town, Filipinos, Crips, and all that. A lot of times we had issues with Crips at the time because there wasn't Norteños, like I said, back in the 80s as much as there is now. So when all this colors and all that came out, next thing you know, you had Crips and then you had Norteños, and it became more of a race thing out there in the streets. So we were fucking with all types of people. Now, I ended up going to juvenile hall, and that is where my first experience where I started running to Sureños. They weren't that deep, right? And like I said, they were more Baisa orientated. But I remember one time when I was in B3, right? And this is my first ever incident that I really had with a Sureño at the time. There was one that came in from San Fernando Valley, right? And in ours, that was a prize. You know what I mean? And you got to remember, as kids, we had a whole misconception, that which I learned later on. We used to think if you're from San Fernando Valley or any of those Riverside or San Bernardino, we labeled you that you were from LA. You know what I'm saying? That was our thinking process. So this dude comes in, and there's two other like Baisa Sureños. They were no threat. And we seen his three dots, and we heard from another Baisa that told us, hey, he doesn't even speak Spanish. You know what I'm saying? And so we were there. I was there with Clinton Clark, Shorty. I'm pretty sure you guys know him. He was an NF member that was running with Lencho. He was Lencho's second in command. I was with him, Nano from Capitol Park, and Payaso from Mountain View. And so we were kids. You know what I'm saying? This was a trophy. So we start just talking smack, man. And I'm not going to lie. I was talking hella smack, calling him this and that. And, what I'm saying? This dude was being quiet, right? And so out of nowhere, this dude gets up, right? Gets up from the chair. We were sitting in front of the TV, and all of us had been talking smack to him. This dude turns around and lights up the dude from Mountain View. And I mean, he lits him up. You know what I'm saying? I had back up, and then all these other homeboys that were talking smack, I'm not going to talk down upon them, but this is a fact, man. None of them busted a grape. And so I decided to grab a chair, and I rushed this dude, and I hit him with a chair. You know what I'm saying? Then the other Surenos got involved, and then I ended up getting smashed up and took him to B1, and I caught an assault with a battery charge. So I get to the boys' ranch at that time. Fortunately, my mom was cool, my probation officer. And when we were there, it's kind of a trip because we must have been about 45 homeboys deep at that time in the ranch out of 85 people. And there was maybe like 3 or 4 Surenos. And it was like, now that I think in retrospect, it was just like us being in a prison yard. Yeah. The numbers, you know what I'm saying? And these guys were getting deeper and deeper. You know, there was this one cat, and no one was handling their business. So I came back, and I was with Gene Shorte Sanchez, and I think I was with Justin Campagna. Well, Shorte's from Panama, so I'm sure you guys all know him on that Panama's case when they committed all those murders. So me and him go back that far back. I was with him and Justin Campagna, Bayaso from VSJ, I believe. And I think even Happy from LNL's was there, Robert Perez, another one that you hear about in Boxer's book. We was all in the ranch together. And so I think Shorte threw the pull stick down and bounced by the Surenos, and they got mad and got stupid. So I ended up rushing this cat, Chemo from VST. I started taking off. I knocked his tooth out of his mouth. The Surenos ran and grabbed it and picked it up. Man, it was funny. And so that was the first altercation that they had with homeboys and Surenos. You know what I mean? Since the boys' ranch had really started, it really wasn't happening because when they got to the ranch, they would run. So I put hands on that dude, and then
run like from the fight or run like escape?
What do you mean?
You said they would run.
They would escape.
Okay.
You know, because I escaped 2 times. Man, I ran with Rocky from Capitol Park, and another time I ran when I had a little OT to go to medical.
That's how the one in Contra Costa is too. They got Byron's Boys Ranch, and man, people would hit that thing and they just bounce. And this in the middle of the woods, and you get a call at 3 a.m. Hey, can you pick me up? And man, they'd be out of there, dude. They wouldn't stay around.
So there was this Sureno there, though, right? From SSP, and he had put hands on a couple of homeboys in juvenile hall. And he wasn't a bison Sureno. I found out later he was related to my homeboys from Milpitas. His name was Dreamer from SSP. Last name Cervantes. And this dude, man, I'm a tall dude. Back then I was probably like 6'2". He was probably like 5'10", 5'11". But you ever see those guys that they just have longer arms than what their body has? So he had long arms. And so he was all tatted down like teardrops, 1-3 on the front of his neck. I mean, you know, but back then everybody's trying to do their time. And so the way that I look, when we went to do off-ranch work crew, there was this African counselor named Mensa, and he was funny as hell, right? And he liked me. So he put me and this dude as crew chief, right? So from there, what ended up happening, right, is we go to get the tools in the boys' ranch in Morgan Hill. So I already fought his boy about a week before. So when we go up there, I'm saying, I tell him, you ready to do this? So we drop our canteens, and there's this little Asian cat that's in charge of the tools because you have different jobs when you're there. Like his job was to prepare the tools. And so we start fighting, but we're both so long-armed, right? That when we're swinging punches at each other, we're just hitting each other's arms, man. And it was comical, man. Like, I swear to God, we must have threw about 20 punches, bro, and neither one of us wanted to hit each other. So finally, I stepped in to let him hit me once, and then I hit him. And I'm going to keep it real. He dropped, but he slipped at the same time. And when he slipped at the same time, I was ready to pounce on him because that's how you get down. You know, you get someone, you know what I mean? And this dude jumped up so damn fast. I'd never seen anybody, like, he must have been going through this out there in the streets or something, man. And he gets up, you know what I mean? So at that time, you know, I ended up running, and I go from juvenile hall to the county jail. I get out, and you know, I started having a reputation for handling my business, and I came out with a whole different mentality. And there was some apartment complex out there in Indian Hills. And what ended up happening was a lot of families were being offered an opportunity to come from gang remote areas and move up north into these apartment complexes. So where we had never had Surenos before, you know, out there in the town, next thing you know, we had a bunch of them, and they were all from LA, 18th Street, and there was Clovers and like 3 or 4 hoods that were in there in these apartment complexes. Our hood was right next to it. So we start crossing them out. We start trying to get at them, right? And so finally, I'm with another homeboy, Dennis Ortiz, wino from Horseshoe, and some other cat, Andy Maldonado, right? Joker. And so We're driving on Calaveras in Park Victoria, and I see these Surenos just pull up to the light, man. Some big dudes, man. I stopped the car broad daylight, and anybody knows Calaveras Park Victoria, that's like the busiest intersection in Milpitas. I get out, I start rushing this dude. The dude starts getting out the car. I start socking this dude up, right? The big one. Wino, we would get so drunk, and I had a 79 Regal at the time, man. And it would take him a long time to get the seatbelt off. The dude, Andy Baldonado, he was a coward, and I'll explain that in a second. So I start fighting this dude. The other one comes from behind. Next thing you know, boom, I get socked. And now I'm getting jumped by 2-3 dudes, right? Whereas I was giving them the business, now I'm getting the business. Wino finally comes out and is helping. I'm on the ground, you know what I mean? We're fighting now 3 of these, 2 on 3. And Wino gets the crowbar from that dude. Joker goes, here, Wino, passes him the crowbar. I see him with my own eyes, like he ain't handling his business. Wino goes, rushes the big Sureno. He tries to hit him. Dude catches it. So I finally get up, and I'm bleeding. These dudes are bleeding, and that's it, right? We take off. So we go back to the hood. We tell the homies what happened, and I ended up smashing that dude Andy Maldonado really bad. I started stomping on his head because he ran. He didn't do nothing to back our play up. So what ends up happening, right? There was this bicep out there named Oaxaca that used to sympathize with the Surenos, and I hit him up when I seen him. Hey, what's up, man? You know, are you backing these dudes' play? Oh, no, that's not our issue. You know what I mean? And so next thing you know, right, we see these Surenos drive by, right? So we jump in my Regal. Now we have about 5-6 heads in the car. I let Wino drive. And so when we pull up into the apartment complex called Suntree Apartments, when we roll up in there, these Surenos set us up. They blocked off both ends to where we couldn't get out. And they started running at us with guns. Now, bear in mind, at the time, back in the days, you know, you'd have little shootings here and there, but there was no gunplay like this, especially at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was more jumpings and, you know what I'm saying, stabbings or this and that would happen from time to time, but we used to just get down with hands. So Wino gets out the car. He throws the crowbar at the Sureno. He starts running. He forgets to put my car in park. I jump out the car. I start running, because, you know what I mean? And I will never forget this. I'm with my boy Oso, rest in peace. He just got killed in Mexico. Me and him are running together, and all I hear was, bah, bah. And there's this black lady walking with her kid, and I felt so bad because we ran through some apartments. She goes and jumps on her kid. You know what I'm saying? So from there, it was on like Donkey Kong. Next day, I end up getting a piece. I go shoot their house up. Boom, boom. Next day, I see them roll by. They had a little Cadillac, with a little Continental kit on the back, lowrider. I was on my bike. I came by. I used to have a 22 Ruger that I got from some female who her dad was some boy that did some time in the prison. And the thing that was funny about this gun is every time I would shoot, I would cock it back. It would discharge the bullet I fired, but then it would discharge 2. You know what I mean? So I was only able to shoot 7 at a time. So every time I shot it, I'd have to cock it back. You know what I mean? Something was funny with the gun. So I shot their car up, and I'm on the middle of my bike, and I'm shooting these dudes, and it was going back and forth. The next day, they catch us. We catch one of them slipping with his lady walking down the street. We're 4 deep. We get out the car to try to rush him. As soon as he sees us, it's 10 o'clock, like 10 o'clock in the morning. This dude pulls out a thing. And the difference between my gun was like bang, bang. Theirs were like boom, boom. They had them cannons, bro. And so it was going on back and forth, and the gangbanging mentality was a little bit different. We just started catching them slipping. We eventually ran them out the area, man. Because anytime we'd see him, if we were 4 or 5 deep, and we'd see him walking down the street, we didn't care. It was pretty bad, bro. You know what I mean? We would catch him slipping and get him. And see, at that time, I got away with so many damn shootings at that time, right? I think within a 6-month period, I think I did like 8. And I think 6 of them were towards Sureños, where I shot a couple. And then 1 was towards some Filipino Crips one night on Calaveras. And the other time was with some homeboys. And then finally I caught that drive-by shooting. So here I am going to prison. You know what I'm saying? And bear in mind, this whole time we were going to Polkaway. We were shooting at them over there. And we were getting in little rumbles and riots. We were going out cruising. And we were going to Sureño vatos like Gramercy. And we were trying to always catch them slipping. And, you know, there was times where, like, you know, we tried to get one. And next thing you know, we're having rocks thrown at us by about 20 dudes. You know what I mean? That's just how it was. That was gangbanging. So I go to the county jail and see, I never knew why I hated Sureños, right? I just did because this is what I was taught. They're the enemy. You know what I'm saying? So I would see these cats when I go to court. And bear in mind, I'm 18 years old. So we'd be talking smack through the door, you know what I mean? They'd be calling you Buster. I'd be like, fuck you, scrap, this and that. And it would go back and forth. And so from there, I ended up actually doing some time. And even in San Quentin, it was like that. Sometimes you'd get caught up and you'd be put in a dummy cage, right? When you get in trouble, say like you don't go lock it up like you're supposed to. And they put you in the dummy cages. And this was like around 96, 97, I think. And when the Surenos would get released for trial, they'd come by there, they spit at you while you're in the dummy cage, and they talk all this smack, you know. And so eventually, you know, like I said, I never ever had any conversations with Surenos at this time, ever. You know what I'm saying? So I get to Solano, and it's the same type of atmosphere. We were deeper in numbers, right? And so we would see the Surenos, and it was, how you say it, the only one I ever had to talk to was this cat named Brick. He was a Sureno calling shots because I was a building channel in Building 4. And he was a dolphin. So he would always keep his people in check. And other than seeing the Surenos on the yard, it was always a hostile type of hate towards each other. We knew we didn't like each other. We didn't talk. There was no common courtesy. There was no type of respect. They were just present there, you know. There was none of this like, you know, sharing revistas and, hey, you need some chinate, you know. Hey, you want to share my wire? So you know, sometimes in the shoe they would let you share a wire to where you could listen to the radio if you didn't have some type of equipment. It wasn't like that, you know. So it was automatic hate, hostilities, you know. And I don't know how when we were in Solano, you know, we were walking the yard sometimes bumping 17 Reasons, like I said before, in the north side. This is how we ride, and I don't know how we didn't kick off a riot over there. But the caliber of the Surenos that were on the yard were basically ones that just wanted to do their time at that time because Solano was kind of a stronghold. So anytime we see individuals that we used to suspect were part of MA Associates or Camarada or what we used to think was SSG as a movement, we would remove them from the yard. And we'd also have our primary targets. And on that yard, they ended up trying to move on Bo and them. Yeah, right. On Bo, Ricardo London, and Smiley. These are all XNF members. Yeah. And they picked the wrong dudes to try to move on because they didn't want to be on the yard.
Yeah, they knew who the right dudes were to go after, though.
Yeah, no, they got the business, you know. So then I tell you guys, I get sent down south, you know, and I get to CMC East. I've told this story before. I was like the only homeboy on the yard, full of dropouts, bulldogs, and Surenos, and there was like about 400 Surenos on that yard, and I had a Mongolian. And I already had these dudes tripping out on me, like telling me, hey, you know, we don't play the politics here. You're going to have to cut that. And I told these dudes kick rocks. And every time I was walking around, I was jumpy and edgy. And, you know what I'm saying? The Sureños started to try to, they were talking smack to me when I went by, calling me Buster. And I already had a plan. I wasn't going to stay on that yard. It was just, who do I take off on? Do I take off on the Bulldogs? Do I take off on the dropouts? I had all this stuff. And see, CDC used to play a lot of games at that time. And so let me backtrack on that too. When I was in Solano, there was two homeboys that got sent to Calipatria before they came to Solano. Conejo from Bryant Street Locals and Smiley from North Highlands. Both these individuals got sent down there and they both got stabbed. They didn't get sliced. They had stab wounds. And that's the game that CDC used to play with us. Knowing damn well they're going to send us to Centinela or Calipatria, Chino or wherever. Knowing we're not going to last on the yard. And they did the same thing with me, sending me to San Luis Obispo because they knew this was a no good place. And I went to Aqua, which was supposed to be the active yard, but yet there was the active northerners on that yard were basically dropouts. And so these Sureños, they disrespect me. So I decided to take off on one. And I waited, you know what I'm saying? When I went in there, I was nervous, you know, you get all that, you know, your hands get clammy, your butt gets all sweaty. I mean, that's the nerves. I mean, that's real. Anybody that's done a hit, anybody that's ever stabbed someone, this is how you feel. It doesn't mean that you're a punk. Fear will make you act. I'm on the yard not knowing what to do, and I'm like a 20-year-old kid. I'm sporting a Mongolian, and I'm in Jap flaps. I haven't even got my stuff. And I'm trying to hit up the Africanos. Do I have any homeboys? And they're telling me, oh, I think. And then the first dudes I run into that I thought were homeboys, I thought maybe they're from Visalia. They ended up being Bulldogs. You know what I'm saying? These other dudes are telling me, hey, we don't play politics. You're going to need to cut your hair. And I got these Sureños over here calling me Buster when I walked by. I wasn't staying on this yard. I'm ready to get off. So I waited, and over there they have stairs. And you guys know how I admitted how when I got into it with the Woods previously, they gave me the business. I admitted it. So I waited till this last dude come. I figure, okay, I'm going to take flight on this dude from behind. And then Whatever comes my way, I'm going to get off. So when I go, I rush this dude as he's about to go on the stairs. I drop him, right? I start smashing on him. His own homeboys that were just talking smack to me 5 minutes before, they started to disperse and run up the stairs and back away. I get pepper sprayed and took him to the hole. I get charged on the yard with 400 Surenos, right? With assault and battery, right? So I go to the hole. And like I said, the interactions, I never had a conversation with any Surenos before. And in there, I end up getting into that little, where I assaulted, almost killed this other dude when I beat him bloody in the showers. They moved me to that tier, like I said, where I was in the last cell with all Surenos. And so every time I go by, I mean, they were woofing. They were talking smack. They were trying to throw piss at me. They were trying to spit at me. And I wouldn't engage or anything. You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do? I just had to hear all this trash talking. And they'd be like, oh, that Buster in 47 down there. And see, there wasn't that level of respect at that time that you see now between Norteños and Sureños. And maybe it was because most of us that got sent to this prison, most of the Sureños that were getting sent there were first-termers that didn't know any better. Didn't have the education. They never even seen a Norteño. And it got bad in there because finally we got some homeboys. And what ended up happening, right, was we would be doing Machina. And these guys would try to start the routine at the same time. So here we are doing cadence over each other while we're working out. And we're going, can't stop. And then, you know what I mean? They're doing their thing. And it was just all disrespect. There was that much hate. Even if I was fishing, right? And my little fishing line got stuck in someone's door. You know what I'm saying? They would know it's there. They wouldn't even try to push it out unless I asked them. You know what I'm saying? And there was no gracias. There was no common courtesy. There was none of that stuff. Now, finally, I get to the shoe, right? And I get validated. I get down there, and I'm in a couple different. I get moved around like to 4 different blocks before I get to the validated block because I was endorsed to the Bay. In the first block I was in, it was no homeboys, and it was all Sureños. And the Africanos were at war with the Sureños in there. You know what I mean? They were playing games where they were gassing each other, and if they shot their line, it was open game to steal their kites, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to get caught. They asked me if I wanted to get involved in this war. They told me, actually sent me a kite. They were real revolutionary. We have declared war with the Sureños. Any line passenger still to steal. I'm thinking, who are you to give me directives? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so finally, man, I end up going to the 4B4 left, man. And I get educated and enlightened. I see the whole difference of our interactions with the Sureños. I was with Daryl, who was an MA member, which was funny. They had him in cell 13 out of all cells.
He was happy like that.
And I seen my first interaction with the actual MA member, and I seen how the Sureños used to really, conduct themselves totally different. And then my next door neighbor ended up being a negro from Pomona, and I forgot his silly was from Conejo. There were some Sureños that did some major hit down south for the MA, and we started to interact. We started sharing magazines. You know what I'm saying? We'd go out to yard at the time, like they'd be in another yard, walk along, and I would talk through the cracks, real respectful, and we'd play a game over the tier of chess, and I started to see like these are supposed to be my enemies, my opposition, but like these dudes are showing me the same respect. I get it; they're still supposed to be considered my enemy. And I'm not supposed to be engaged in any false type of relationships. But it started to give me a whole different aspect in seeing how real Sureños carried themselves, you know. And this started to translate later in my career as I kept on going back to the shoe. Like I talk about before, I was with Shotgun and Danny Boy from 18th Street, Lucky from Winter Gardens, and Rojo from Simi Valley, and all these Sureños, you know what I mean? Jacko from the MA. He was there as well. A couple other cats, Lobster and Wedo and all these Sureños. And it was respect, you know. And I'm not going to lie. I used to kind of trip, and I think Rojo touched on this, man. I would get along with these dudes so well, man. I was thinking like, man, I really have no hate towards these guys, man. These are actually some solid dudes, man. And we would chop it up because at that time we were all on walk alone. And so they would always be next to me. And at that time, you know, they would run the cage yards. And once the cage yards were full, they would run the walk-alongs on the group yards. So we would talk in the crack, and we would talk about females, talk about sports. We would gamble. And I started to have a whole different respect for Sureños in general. Whereas before, I had a natural hate for these individuals because I didn't know them as individuals. You know, I started to teaching Shotgun how to play the stock market. I used to, Grillo was there from Pico Nueve. All these different hoods, man. We started to interact. You know what I mean? I get a care package I would go lace all these people. You know what I'm saying? Like here. You know what I mean? The raza. You know what I'm saying? And I started to see how they handled their business. And I could say this, out of all the groups, you know what I'm saying? Norteños and Sureños, we carry ourselves with, as far as the utmost respect. And we handle our business more than any other group. And so there's a admiration of respect in how they handle their business. Our politics are different, you know what I'm saying? Whereas they function more, they've had that, what is it, the yaquero system, where they have 3 people in the yard, like a basic council. They've also had the llavero, whatever, all the different positions, right? And they have their camaradas and the way they deal with their homeboys. But in certain ways, they function basically the same in how they handle their business. So my whole perception of Sureños in general is, man, the only difference is you're from down north, have a little bit different political structure, but basically have lived the same type of lifestyle that I have.
Yeah, man, I just feel like I'm an audience member, man. That was a good story, bro. I don't really have a lot to add to this one, man. I've touched on it in the past about the little run-ins I used to have with them in Concord, and they shot at my house one time. We chased them around, but it's basically this, what you just said, man. Like, everybody don't really understand why they're enemies at first on the streets, going through juvenile hall, going through the counties and stuff. And even if you land on a soft level 1, level 2 yard or something, you just don't get it. You're just not supposed to like them guys, man. But as either side, north or south, as they get educated and become more veterans of the prison system, man, they start to see the whole picture of everybody's the same. You got little, small differences in the way that they grow up down there and the way we grew up here. But, man, for the most part, man, there's not too much difference, I never really had that many run-ins with them in the penal system because in my county, they used to keep them so segregated, even in juvenile hall and in the county. Sometimes the ones that really didn't have no education would try to slide through our little reception area in the county, which is also a place where they send disciplinary overflow. So, me and a handful of other individuals would be in there on disciplinary reasons, and they try to sneak through and, man, they'd get the business, but, man, it wasn't because, they were soft or anything like that. It's just because we were already seasoned. We already had it established, and they had no idea really that they weren't even supposed to be there, man. So, me and like Payaso from Concord and Looney Boy from Concord, we'd lie in wait for them. You know what I mean? And it's just like, even then, I really didn't even know why I didn't like them. I just knew that, I was red and they were blue. That was almost the extent of it, But as I got to prison and, in Susanville, we wouldn't really talk or nothing like that. But, every once in a while you'd catch somebody giving you kind of like a mean mug or whatever. But we were told to kind of blow it off. We were even in numbers. There was never no significant incidents on the yard. But like Flacco said, man, once you get to the shoe and you're around educated people from either side of the fence, things change, man. And when you can talk to somebody like a human being instead of an enemy, you realize, man, that I met some cool Sureños, man, like really cool that I would mess with on the streets right now, as well as the MA members, man. They're people just like anybody else, man, and they're with the business. A lot of people think, that are used to dealing with the upstate Sureños back in the 90s before they were really established and all that, before they were educated, that it's a walk in the park. I mean, you can't take nothing away from the Sureños. They're not playing. But I don't got nothing bad to say about them, and I don't really have a lot to add because I've touched on all this previously, man. But, yeah, man, much love to the south side and much love to the north side. Everybody, do your thing.
The one thing that people forget, though, man, and it was a different time here in the 80s and 90s, though, too, brother.
Yeah.
There was times when we would get sent down south, man, like when we were like 10, 20 deep or even 5, 10 deep trying to establish a foothold. There were Sureños that used to try to press us, man.
Oh, of course.
They were doing the MA's bidding.
Yeah.
Don't let those busters walk the line. Make sure they put on their shirts. And so that's where a lot of the education from us came from our elders, was the things that we did have to go through. And any old Sureño that's been around since the 80s and 90s would understand that this did happen. I stepped it down to a yard, the homie like Conejo I just mentioned, and from Bryant Street and Smiley, I bet you those Sureños that were in the yard never even ran into a Norteño. Just because they were Norteño, they got stabbed. And that's just the whole type of cycle of events that's always happened between North and South that's been going on for years. And it seemed like around the 2000s, basically with all the elders, the Bay, up in the Bay and Corcoran.
Yeah, if you would have told me, 10 years ago that northern guys and southern guys would be playing handball together and eating together and all that stuff, man, I would have said, man, you're tripping, dude.
Which is not a bad.
No way,
it's not a bad thing. It's just
not at all.
What's
man.
the concept behind it? Is it? I mean, we know what the purpose is. It's about making money, man.
Yeah, I never if you would have asked me in the '90s if I foreseen anything like this ever happening, I would have said you were out of your mind.
But the same thing's going on now. In as far as it's kind of like a difficult situation because I hear people in the comments and I've watched other videos and they talk about the upstate Surenos and how does this into hostilities make them feel? You know what I'm saying? Because they've been on front lines this whole time.
Yeah.
And they're, what I mean? They're out here, they're established, but they're still getting the blues from time to time out here, man. And vice versa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that hate's just been instilled for years because, like I said, the whole concept of what I'm trying to bring up in this whole message, right? And I talked to a lot of active Surenos, and one of them just asked me the other day that he asked me to do a topic on, why do we think it's okay for us to write down our other groups and movements? And isn't that kind of, he asked me in a respectful way. He goes, we kind of look at that borderline traitorous. He goes, because what if you're monitoring our activities and you give out our information and the next thing you know, it lands in the canine's hands. You know what I'm saying? And
that's just part of doing business, man. I mean, it's gonna happen sometimes.
Yeah,
it's not intentional. We never want the canine to get anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they intercept stuff, they intercept stuff. But the reason we do that, we're nosy people, for one, and for two, the main part of the focus of that is security, man. It's to keep our household safe, But man, it's gonna happen. The canines are gonna intercept stuff, and we don't care if it's about us, you, the cops, whoever. We don't want them to get zero. But, back then, we weren't going to change how we did business, with the thought that maybe it'll get intercepted. We're going to do what we think is right as far as security.
Yeah, most definitely. That's the whole thing. Well, I was trying to tell him as well, is that's for security caution. And as far as, like I used an example, like we used to keep cuentas of the counts of the Sureños. You know what I'm saying? Like on a daily basis, what they were doing. We'd have yard patrols and we would report that. A little bit different back in the 90s. We used to verbally report all this. I agree. The paper is kind of a little bit ridiculous because you're jeopardizing your household. And you've had people in Santa Clara County who've actually been indicted over being on a roster, over getting caught with HHPs. They're being gang indicted now in San Jose over stuff like that. But back to the Sureños. Like I said, man, it comes from the early teachings, man. You teach them to hate the enemy, and they're forever gonna have that same sight. And for years, the culture that I got from the homies when I first got pulled into this lifestyle, when I was getting locked up and being educated on basically on Bond 11, right, was that the reason why the Surenos were my enemies was because of their alliance with the MA, and because the MA's whole agenda was to prey upon our raza and to oppress us. And so that was the mindset of why I felt they were my enemy. But the more and more interactions I had with them, especially with people who've been on level 4 yards, I guess you see a lot of that petty stuff on level 1, level 2, that petty disrespect. But when you get to level 3, level 4, there's no time to be disrespecting anybody. Because one sign of disrespect, it's all going to kick off. And let me tell you this, on those level 4, I don't care what you are. Norteño, Sureño, whites, even the blacks. They're going to handle their business on these yards. And so when you're on that type of level with people who understand that and function as convicts on that type of level, you're going to have that common courtesy and respect. And that's what it comes down to, is common courtesy. And after a while, I used to question things like, why am I hating these individuals? And over time, as I got involved in the organization, I was less concerned with what the Sureños were doing, even behind the walls. It's like when I would get a report on things, it's like, okay, you know what I'm saying? It was just information to process. They're not a threat. Let's get back to business. What ventures do I have going on in the streets? What are my plans when I get out? Even when I would step out on the streets, I was lacing the youngsters out there more about getting money and less about taking care of the Sureños, because I had a whole different mindset. That whole Sureño Norteño trip wasn't even a concern to me. Unless it presented interference in my activities, I had no concern about it.
Yeah, me neither. Not
you know
whatsoever.
I would be open. I was open to doing business. I would be open to doing business with certain Sureños when I was out there in the streets. If I could make money, let's make money. And that's the whole attitude I had. I kept a lot of that kind of things under wraps. Just like I said before, we used to even deal with dropouts. As long as they didn't commit no crimes against the people, such as telling or shedding blood, we had a green light to sell to dope dropouts out there on the streets.
Right.
And that's just how it is. Money is the ruler of all evils.
Yeah, as time goes by, man, both groups seem to be more focused on the money than the old long-standing animosity that has been around too, man. So, everything's changing for the better, man, because the important thing is money,
Yeah. With that, man, this is just a little bit of insight. I just want to tell a story about the Surenos because I felt it was important of how we indoctrinate at such a young age to have hate for someone that you don't even know. And then I have friends to this day that are Surenos, you know what I mean? One from Florencia, one from Garden out there in Garden Grove. And then I have another one that's an upstater actually from Napa. You know what I'm saying? I interact with these cats, you know what I'm saying? I've ate with these cats at my table. And it's all been all respect. And I've also had to work with others, so my experiences is different from them what I was told. But then again, I'm not living that gangbanging lifestyle no more. With that, it's your boy Flacco. I'm out. Please hit the like and subscribe button.
Have a good day, YouTube.